I told the plug I need 100 pigs. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I told my plug I need 100 pigs. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I told the plug I need 100 pigs. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I told my plug I need 100 pigs. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I'm in Cali every week. I go hard.
Good afternoon. You're listening to Cannabis Corner on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We are streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live. Just go to facebook.com/New Haven Independent or go to your Facebook page and look us up. And you might as well hit see first so you can catch all the other good shows that are on here. We got Harry the Brave, we've got the Joe Ugly Show, we've got the Mayor, we got Love Babs, we got all kinds of great stuff on this station.
On this wonderful station.
Yeah, and it's always talking about what's happening politically. You know, there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good information being given out.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Joe, it's great to see you.
Hi, Uncle Lou. I missed you a couple weeks, bro. What's up?
2 weeks.
And this week it's you and I.
That's it. You know, it just shows how busy this industry is as we continue to move forward, because Kebra's not with us today because she's getting another certification.
Right.
She's leveling up, one might say.
Leveling. That's right, because life is a video game.
Sometimes it is, man. It's an adventure, at least.
Yeah.
So we have to say, hey, thank you very much to Kebra, who's doing awesome, and good luck on your certification. She's going to be out there for a couple days, and we love you and keep powering up. Yeah, man. We love her.
So speaking of Kebra.
Yes.
She was on a panel last week.
Great panel.
This was legalization's heating up.
Right in the Capitol, LOB, right in the middle of the
LOB, when they announced the bill, Thursday?
That's right.
They announced their version of the bill, which we're going to get into today. Mm-hmm. They had a nice press conference. Mike D'Agostino and all the guys were talking about all their plans.
It was a big press conference.
Big press conference for the bill. It was covered by,
everybody,
all over the place.
Literally everybody.
And they announced it, and then the next day, right at the LOB, they had a big a forum on equity in the cannabis industry, and they brought down some heavy hitters.
Some big cannabis
She really
names.
did.
Yes.
Shailene Title, Chanel Lindsay, Kebra was in there.
There was another lawyer from the area, a nice woman lawyer, so super powerful.
The head of the MCBA.
Exactly, the head of which is awesome. This was the amount of power
even
there.
spoke.
Yeah, the amount of power that was inside that room was
it was really good, and it was really well put together. Everybody had their own area of expertise that they spoke about, and it was mostly about equity, you know, and how we can create an equitable cannabis industry. And the good thing about it is you had two people up there, and basically three actually, who were a part of doing that in Massachusetts.
Yes, because who are still fighting it now, who's still doing it now.
Trying to make it work.
Yeah.
Trying to make what they designed work.
Yeah.
Which is always a problem, because, you have the influence of other legislators, and you have red tape, and then you have people who try to get around the system.
But they're in there, and they're fighting that fight.
They didn't give up.
That's right.
They're on the commission, and that's an important point. That they are on the Cannabis Commission. They were activists. Shailene Title's been in the industry for a long time. She used to run a staffing service. She's a lawyer.
Correct.
Both of them are lawyers. So they have good background, and they are cannabis activists. And so they were really in the middle of it, and they still are. And they really spoke about some of the difficulties, not just the wonderful things that Massachusetts did, but some of the difficulties that they've had implementing these bills.
Yeah.
And the good thing I think about it was, more than anything that encouraged me, was the participation of Mike D'Agostino and Juan Candelaria at the end. They really, really seemed very interested in what was being said. Like, they really cared that their bill was going to include at least as much as what was presented for it.
Right.
Because Shailene Title presented 10 points that must be in a fair and equitable cannabis bill.
I wonder where that came from.
Right, which I have here. This is exactly how we're gonna go over the bill. We're gonna compare them.
I'm so very proud to say that I worked with those guys.
Right. So, but they were very engaging. They were asking a ton of questions, and you could tell that they knew that the people on the panel had a lot of stroke in the industry, and we're going to have a lot of influence on the bill that they put together. And I think in a way, Mike was a little nervous.
Yeah.
And he almost showed it. It's like, guys, what if my bill doesn't have all 10 of these? What if I can get you 80%? Are you going to kill it? And it's like nobody really answered him because nobody really knows what, we all know in politics there's tiny compromises. But as long as you can get it in writing.
That's all that matters. Just get it in writing. You know how
you may
many
not
times
be able to get them to implement
that
it.
short-term memory does not work because they forget stuff real quick.
That's the difference between an aspirational goal and a real goal.
That's right.
Is when you put it in writing. So it's like, maybe some of these things won't get implemented right away. But put them in writing as when you're going to do them and what you're going to do. You can't just have these pie-in-the-sky general things, of what you're going to do for equity. It has to be written down.
That's right.
It has to be set in stone.
People forget things.
Because, we'll deal with that later. Never happens. So a lot of good points made up. A few things about the bill before we have Jason Ortiz coming on and calling us. A few things about it. One thing, it does not contain grow rights.
It does not.
No. Contains a study.
It does.
A grow right. What do you need to study?
What I believe
what
they
do
should do. This is my idea. The study should be allowing medical patients
to grow
rights. That should be a sample. And this is where I want to continue this conversation.
Yeah, interesting enough, when Mike D'Agostino walked out of the room to walk up to his office, I followed him out, followed him all the way up to his office, and I said, Mike, you talk about a study here. I said, why don't you give grow rights to patients, and that can be your study? So, because you already have all their info.
Right.
And if you have them registered to grow, then you know who they are.
Yeah.
And I said, there's your study. You could find out how it did after a year, and how it affected the medical market. And he agreed. He said, that would be ideal. He said, but you have to understand, he said the same thing. I have to get 95 votes, and some of these people are still very leery of grow rights in any form.
So here's what I would say, and we can just throw some sample set numbers out there that aren't really logged into what we know. So what I would say is we have 40,000 patients here in Connecticut.
Close, 35 something. Yeah.
35,000.
We'll have 40 by the time the bill comes up.
So we figure 40,000 patients, but how many residents? A couple million, right?
3
million residents. So now what they're scared about is that, what if 50% of our people decide to grow? That's 1.5 million people growing cannabis. But if we take the sample set of medical patients of 35,000 and say, hey, maybe 25% of these patients will grow because they already have established histories with the dispensary. They already know what they're doing. Or they already have a medical plan that works for them. Say 25% of this 35,000 are going to actually grow.
Right.
Now you actually have a sample set of about,
I
say more like 10 too, but now you have a sample set of about 5,000 people in the state growing, which is less than a half a percentage.
You know who they were because they're already medical patients, registered patients.
You know what I mean? So now this sample set can just a simple DCP or even an independent survey. A group like us, a contractor, somebody like us sends out a survey out to the registered patients. How'd you grow? How'd you
make it all the way
to
the end? Did you have any
problems? Was billing okay? Simple questions like that. We're giving this to all you legislators right now. We're literally handing you your scientific program. And as long as you give it to your medical patients.
Yeah.
Because if they say, well, we'll give it to a random adult, I'll raise my hand.
I could understand why they're leery of giving it for rec. Okay, I can understand.
Yeah. But give it to our medical patients.
Give it to the medical. It's time. It's time to give it to the medical patients. And then you can start from there. And he agreed with me.
Yeah.
He agreed with me. He said it would be a good way to thread the needle.
Yep.
And I said, okay, so put it in writing. There comes the old thing. Hello, is this Jason Ortiz on the line? He hung up on us. Man.
Well, that's okay.
He's going to call right back.
Because he will make sure he's in here. So we appreciate you all.
So anyway, so the grow rights thing right away, they say that. But one thing I do like that they did institute was the Cannabis Control Commission, which was not in the other bill. So the implementation, okay. Hello, is this Jason Ortiz on the line? Hello? I don't hear anybody. Harry.
He's trying. He's trying hard.
And is he still on, Harry?
It says he's on.
Jason?
Jason has his own mute.
Jason, you have us on mute?
Oh. Hello?
Hey,
there you are. You did have us on mute.
How's it going, Jason?
There we go. How's it going, fellas?
Good, Jason. How are
amazing,
you?
brother? How are you?
I'm chewing on a ham. I'm a little tired. It was a long weekend with lots of cannabis justice, but it was good. We made a lot of progress. I'm proud of it.
Yeah, we were just speaking about the forum on Friday, and how impactful I felt that was to the legislators who did attend. I really felt.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really elevated the level of discussion and level of discourse on the issue to a point I don't think it's ever been that detailed in Connecticut. To have the legislators sort of very much in the weeds in a public forum, trying to figure out what the best policy is.
Yeah, no, and he was very engaging. Mike and Juan were very, very engaging, and that was encouraging. That was very, very encouraging. And then
absolutely, and they decided to release their bill the day before.
Right? Yeah, they could have waited.
That wasn't on accident, I don't think. So it definitely created a boost in just the relevance of the issue and everybody, really being able to dig into the details. And now we have 2 public hearings at minimum coming up this Friday.
Right.
So I definitely feel like legalization is going to have its day in court, right here in the public center. And we're all going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, I agree. Friday is a big day for 2 hearings. One in the General Assembly and one the judicial. I guess we'll have to jump back and forth depending on which ones you want to testify on.
Doozies of bills, my friend.
Oh, I know.
There's a lot going on in both of them.
Oh, there really is. There's a lot, especially the judicial bill. I could barely get through that without, shaking my head. And if I had hair, I would have pulled it out.
I looked through that thing.
I mean, and I've read them both, and I even started to. It's like line by line. I have questions and comments.
Oh,
and so I think, generally speaking, the general law bill does some fantastic things and does a lot of things right, and it is clear that there is an effort on establishing equity in the state of Connecticut. Like, that's 100%. So I want to thank D'Agostino and the other representatives that worked on this to make sure that, and folks like Gary Winfield, that made sure our language was in there, because it's there. It's just there among a lot of other things that I don't know how I feel about. And we can kind of go through both of them, but I will say it's mixed, and so there's some things I want to keep in there. There's some things I would tweak, and then there's things that I think maybe should be removed, and things that weren't mentioned that should be added.
Right.
As with any great piece of policy.
So we were, and now you had something going on also in Waterbury this weekend?
Yeah, so there was also a forum by the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus in Waterbury to hear from the public, statewide, what issues they should work on. And there was, cannabis was a hot topic, and I spoke myself. Raphael from Pure also spoke, and Paul Kirchberg from Normal were there, in addition to others that spoke in favor. And it was good legalization very strongly. I think in some real fantastic narrative ways, they shared how they felt about it. And it was definitely a mixed crowd as far as favor or against.
Yeah, you actually had some prohibitionists there, didn't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. They were there in numbers. There was a lot of folks from the faith community that really just were against it and had situations in their lives that led them to believe that. And then there were other folks, and to be honest, the folks that came out against legalization were much older than the folks that came out in support of legalization and had very different experiences with the legal system that led them to believe that we should end the war on cannabis users.
Right. And there was also another one in Wallingford, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, there was an actual press conference.
Explicitly anti-legalization protest led by the city mayor, or maybe a city council person.
A city council person,
yeah.
And of course, though, the representatives from that town all showed up too.
Yeah, I mean, so you can see we have a lot of work to do on many different fronts. Not just making sure we have a good bill, but then regardless of the content of the bill, making sure we have a ground operation that can really push this thing through when it does hit the full House and Senate.
Yeah, because there is still a lot of opposition out there. Yeah, there really is. Yep. We have to remember we're in Connecticut, and this is why we even see some opposition within the legislature. of some of the stuff we talked about. So we should go. Do you want to go over Shailene's 10 points and compare it to our bill? And
I think that we don't have enough time to do that because it's a lot. But I'm happy to go over these 10 points. I'll give you first my initial on the pros and cons of the judicial and
yes, let's hear about your initial thoughts.
Because I think there's some big ones on there that I want to get across. Shailene's 10 points definitely get more into the nuances of who and how we structure the regulations even after legalization,
right?
Which I think is a bit of a different conversation. But I do encourage folks to go check it out. It's on Cure's page, pinned to the top,
right?
And you can on our Facebook page, and you can go through it because it's way more protective of the process, I think, than any of the bills that have been put forward really address. But for me, the positive of 7371, which is the general law one,
right? That's the one I have up here.
Incentives for equity applicants. It's clearly trying to create some support systems for our equity applicants. It does create small, medium, and large licenses, which I think is really important for cultivation and manufacturing. So that means there will be small cultivator licenses available.
Yep.
That's awesome. It puts 2 social justice commissioners on the commission itself, which is actually an increase over Massachusetts. What that means as far as actual background, I'll have to ask, because social justice is not like a legal term.
He said 5 years or something.
Talk about. So let's see what that means, because it actually requires experience in that, which we want to make sure we're making those positions available to folks that make sense for it.
Somebody like, I don't know, somebody like you.
Well, I think, there's a few other things, too. It doesn't prevent folks with possession charges in the industry. It requires diversity plans and community investment from private entities above and beyond whatever the state does. And then, there's a micro-business study that's kind of like, okay, like I'm glad it's in there. I probably mentioned the word micro-business, but like a study, why do we have to do another study? We can look at Massachusetts. It hasn't really gotten off the ground yet, but positive thing that micro-business is in there. It also allows towns to say no and restricts funding for those that say no. And so I do think that cities should be able to say no if they want it. I actually think that's a benefit for everybody to allow towns to do it how they see fit and let the local folks organize their communities and make it happen, because there are plenty of towns that do want it. And I think it's a fair trade-off to let them do that. It has stuff in there about delivery, which is great. And there's also some pieces for patients that reduces the price of getting your license under $10.
Yep.
And also looks at reducing the cost and subsidizing the cost if you can qualify as a low-income patient. So the idea that the state might subsidize the cost is a very interesting addition to this discussion. Right? That's the word that is in the statute, is subsidize. And so could folks that are patients get heavily reduced price on their marijuana, or even pay no out-of-pocket expense? Seems possible to me under this bill.
However, you'd have to do a program through the dispensaries.
Say that again?
I said you probably have to do a program through the dispensaries. You'd have to get them all to sign on to it.
Yes, right. But that's not detailed.
Right.
What that may be. So that just means we have to do it say what we want to at this point. So, but there's also a ton of problems.
Yes, let's start.
And I can't go through all of them right now. But if you go through it, there's a lot of bad things, right? It does not protect anyone that had intent to sell or cultivation cards at all in any of this, right? And so we're always talking about legalizing it when it comes to possession, but we're not talking about intent to sell or cultivation as part of the new framework. And so I think it's dishonest to call this a legalization bill if sale by unlicensed entities will still result in jail time, for licensed entities to be making millions off it. Because that's what is going to happen. If somebody will be arrested for small sales right next to a dispensary and still go to jail, from what I see in this.
Right.
And under the judicial bill, I get even more worried because there's all kinds of weird language in the judicial bill as far as penalties go for unlicensed sales.
Right.
So that is massive red flag number one. Right? It's just leaving out the idea that intent to sell and cultivation should remain felonies, right? Like that's just wild to me.
Now,
So,
the expungement part does not include felonies, does it? And it
correct.
doesn't include, like you say, sale. It's only for people who had misdemeanors, right? Under an ounce and a half. So it's really kind of minimal expungement.
And
correct.
And you know, we were discussing this once before. My thought on that is our medical program is 2.5 ounces. You know, that leeway should be considered in there, because what happens if that patient was, you know, now later is now a medical patient, they're allowed 2.5 ounces, you know.
Are they allowed 4 ounces?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, like for me, it's not so much the amount that I'm worried about; it's the leaving out of cultivation or intent to sell from the process.
Well, the intent to sell,
that is what we're legalizing right now. In addition to possession, we're legalizing cultivation and sale of cannabis. So to leave out that entire section, and that is going to be a lot of people, and it's going to be a lot of people that are currently in prison.
It's a lot of people.
Because cultivation and sale, where folks get bigger charges, operating a drug factory, right? If you have a cultivation facility,
and that's
you might be charged with operating a drug factory,
right? And so then the deals that they made
that are all now legal, like, need to be part of this program,
right?
And so to leave that part out, like, it's not addressing the fact that locking people up for cultivation to begin with was wrong.
Right.
It's not just the possession was wrong. It was never wrong. But the cultivation and intent to sell part, like, has to be in there for expungement, and it has to be protection to enter the industry. Because right now it says you can still get a job if you got a possession charge. So you're telling me I can't work in a grow if I had a cultivation charge?
Right. That's ridiculous.
Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
And so that's where, like, there's some amazing stuff in these bills, but then you keep reading and you're like, yeah, but that part's got to go and that part's got to go.
Right.
And there's a lot for us to hammer out together as far as priorities go. And so when D'Agostino says 80%, right, it's like that 80% is a real murky number.
Right.
If you're putting in 80% of my list and then adding another 100% on top of that of all this other stuff, you know, that's not the same 80%.
The water's down the 80%, yeah.
Right, you know, and so as we move forward, there's a lot of details here that I need further clarification on, right? So, for instance, the piece around a 3-month head start for equity applicants and medical dispensaries. And in the law, it says that they will have license to reopen at the same time. However, in Section 17 of the bill, it also says that the Commissioner of Consumer Protection may adopt regulations pursuant to Chapter 54 of the General Statutes, including emergency regulations pursuant to Section 4168 of the General Statutes, to implement the provisions of this Act, not limited to on a temporary basis, dispensary facilities, licensed per insurance, blah, 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 blah. So we get a 3-month head start at some point, except they can do emergency provisions and let everybody start immediately.
I see this right here, yep.
And so that, in my opinion, nullifies the entire head start.
Yep. Because you know they will.
Right. And so if retail can immediately just start selling and growing and capitalizing and merging, and then the regulatory process takes 2 years, those emergency provisions will be in place the entire time, and there will be no equity applicants in any of that.
Right.
By definition. And so that section at the bottom, right? I just don't know.
Yeah, that's like the last thing.
Right. It's the last piece, right? Because, I don't know, most folks don't read all the way to the end of the bill because it can be a difficult read sometimes.
Right. People get tired of reading through it.
Bill, the expungement part's all the way at the bottom. So there's a lot to like. There's a lot to be concerned about. I would say, you know, the general law bill seems most tweakable as far as preserving the basic core of what they're trying to do with removing some of the bad things. The judicial bill just feels like the intent is wrong, right? There's additional penalties on folks for sale and things like that.
Yeah, it's like now that it's legal, we want to punish you more for doing it illegally.
And that's where I feel like the core philosophy, while it also has some good points, seems to be off there. And that's when maybe we have to try to redirect where we're going with it. But they are both, you know, subject to amendment and change dramatically here.
Right.
So it's not to think that any of this is bad. You know, it's just now is the time to stock up your red flags. Go to Walmart, wherever you're going to go, buy a lot of red flags and put them all over this bill and let your people know where your red flags are, because there's a lot, and I encourage everyone to read it all the way to the end. But trying to pick like a yes or no on this bill is it's far too complicated to do that.
Right, right. Now, what do you think about not putting grow rights in this bill when the other bill had grow rights? This includes a study on grow rights, and now Lou and I were discussing, and you and I have discussed this.
Yeah.
Why not patient grow rights as your study? I mean, there's your study group right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, grow rights are everywhere else, and it's doing fine. Vermont has had grow rights for longer than it's been even considering full rec, and, Vermont is still doing okay. You know, and people are still living there. The sky did not fall in Vermont.
Right.
And so and I'm glad people in the forum pressed for the details and why people are opposed to it. And it seemed like, the answer given was that people are just opposed to unregulated marijuana, which I'm not sure is the strongest argument, but I think folks should still be pushing for it. And in rec at bare minimum medical patients, I've not to hear the real argument against it other than there's just no votes for it. And so I would just keep pushing for it at this point.
Right. I mean, we have to push that be put in. And people have to realize that when you put your testimonies in, put that in there, that you feel like this was, omitted from the bill and it should be put in. And that's what that whole hearing is for, testimony.
Correct.
That's what the testimonies are for. You need to tell these legislatures what you like and what you don't like about this bill. And, in the shortest, you get 3 minutes to do it. But your written testimony can be as long as you want it. But for those people who don't necessarily are not able to come out to the LLB on Friday, please make sure that you at least write a written testimony, even if it's a short paragraph with bullet points about what you would like to see and what you don't. You don't have to get, you don't have to give your history of why you love cannabis and all that. It's beyond that. We don't have to convince them anymore to legalize
focus
it.
on the details.
Right.
There's a lot of them, and we need lots of people to focus on all of them. It's just too much for any one person to ever be able to handle on their own. And there's so many communities that are going to be affected by this, and the only folks that can properly advocate for those communities are people from those communities.
Right.
And so that includes all of us. Whatever community you're from, wherever you decide you want to engage in cannabis, practices, talk about that. Talk about what it means to your town, your family, but on the details of it, right? Like, why is a $75,000 application fee cost prohibitive for you and thus deny entire community opportunity?
Right, exactly.
Right? And so that's a very specific detail that clearly, affects a lot of people. And that is something that is in the bill. It's words like $75,000. And so, read that. That's a large cultivator will be charged $75,000 non-refundable application fee to apply.
Well, that's what he did with. That's what they did with medical.
It was 25, and so now it goes up to 75 for large cultivation. But yeah, it is. It's the same idea, right? The same idea that we're just going to put artificial barriers to entry in front of people to make it impossible for anyone that doesn't already have someone in banking to make it happen.
Right.
And so that's another piece of it, right? The application fees alone, you can say everyone can get a license, but you just have to pay $10 million.
Right.
Well, not everybody can get a license. Not everybody has $10 million.
Right.
So
and even just that non-refundable risk.
Language here, right, is very aspirational in some senses, but the barriers to even get started are pushing out entire, chunks of our community.
Well, I've looked at Massachusetts licensing tiers, and they're fairly reasonable. I don't understand why Connecticut can't just look at what they're doing and just model it.
Some pieces are. So the smaller licenses, the small cultivation licenses, I think it's 5,000.
Right.
Is what they say. And that's great, right? And so, but when you start going up from that, it's just
well, that's why
you to push people out.
Right, and you need to also have like that incubator process where some of the larger people who do have the money and who do have the licenses are able to maybe help people get smaller licenses and help them grow to the point where they could get larger licenses. But, that's a whole nother part of the system, like an incubator type system where you're actually giving back to people in the community so they can start small businesses, which will grow into large businesses.
Right. But only if there's space in the market to grow into.
Right.
Because if they give emergency regulations that allow folks to just start flipping the switch before anyone has even seen the application process, these other industries will expand, in
and
a
create
market
barriers to
sense
entry, for
before
sure.
anyone even can get in the door.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is one part of the bill that I don't agree with, is the fact that they would like to jumpstart the program by October by using the current existing system. And this is where you're talking about the emergency, basically, regulation, where there's no Cannabis Control Commission set up yet. Like you said, there's no new licensing fees, so nobody knows what the new fees are. And these guys are already in there flooding the marketplace with their stuff.
And then we recently approved 10 new dispensaries, and none have opened up. So what are they doing? They're going to completely bypass the medical marketplace and jump right into the rec?
Well, I think they bought medical licenses, so they have to buy new licenses.
But if they will
not if there's emergency regulations that allow them to on a temporary basis provide dispensary facilities licensed pursuant to Chapter 420F, which is kind of funny. That the cannabis chapter is 420, but of the general statute to dispense retail cannabis.
Yep.
Like
that medical
producers license, blah blah blah, can supply cannabis to such dispensaries.
Right.
And then they wouldn't even need to use their medical license. They jack their prices up all the way up. And now they only serve the rec marketplace with a discount to medicinal users, a 20% discount, so you don't pay tax. All that wording, all it does is create complete barriers, and you know what I mean? And
to new businesses opening.
You didn't even participate in the program for the last couple of years, but you got your license, and now what are you building? How long is it going to take you to build this out? You were supposed to be able to build out already.
Yeah.
Now you're just going to open for rec.
Yeah.
That's what happened in Oregon.
Yeah.
That's why they're not,
Well, hopefully they're listening to us.
I'm less worried they're not going to get to it fast enough, and I'm worried that they're going to get to just fine and corner everything.
Yeah.
Well, they will. They want
because there's no home grow.
If anybody really reads what these guys say, and they're the guys who are lobbying against home grow, you know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure.
If anybody reads like what Curaleaf says, we want to be the Starbucks of marijuana, Acreage is pissed off about the non-vertical integration because Acreage wants a cultivation license here in Connecticut, and they can't get one because they already own a dispensary. Yes, I heard that when I was up there on Friday. I heard it from one of the lobbyists that Acreage is really fighting the vertical integration thing because they want to have a cultivation license. And I think right off the get-go, Jason, I think we ought to cap large licenses here in Connecticut. So in other words, these 4, that's it. You're done. No more large cultivation in Connecticut.
Yeah, that's one thing. It gives the power to the Department of Consumer Protection to set the number of licenses to meet demand.
Do we need 4?
How the Department of Consumer Protection is going to quantify demand is going to be a very interesting process.
Right.
And that data, right? So here's the other thing. We're in the world of big data now and actually using data both to drive community reinvestment, which I think is a positive use of that data, but also when we start having to quantify who will get a piece of the pie based on how the study is done, it's just going to get real political, right, real quick again.
Yeah.
And so we have to consider that whole piece of it, right, that people are just making it up as they go and giving the Department of Consumer Protection emergency powers to do this is, that's scary, man.
That's scary. I mean, I think before we do anything, we have to establish that Cannabis Control Commission because they need to be in charge.
Agree. And here's the other piece of it that I think, CCC, we have to dig into a little bit more. The process by DCP so far has been racist.
Right.
And we have to make it clear that the way that they're currently doing it has exploited our communities and purposefully pushed us out. It has not been a solid process. So to give a process that is demonstrably and overwhelmingly privileging the rich and white emergency powers to double down on that system, cannot be allowed to move forward.
Right.
And so that is a piece that I think we did talk about on Friday, right? We have to admit that it wasn't just a mistake, it was racist. In its impact and its intent. And Connecticut's medical process is the same thing. And so, that just has to be out there and spoken about when we start talking about giving that entity the power to do it all over again.
Right. They screwed up the medical. Why would we let them do the rec? And I think that is the most important thing. That I'm going to put that in my testimony, that you can't allow DCP to watch over this program. You must establish the Cannabis Control Commission first. And included in that commission should be the social Department on Social Justice Equity in the industry as well. You know, the one that branch that would make sure specifically, or one person on the Cannabis Control Commission who ran a program that made sure specifically that the money that was earmarked for the communities went where it was supposed to go. Because we all know how that goes once once that money starts getting into the general fund and all that, it's all of a sudden gets lost and doesn't get into the right hands. So I think that's key too.
And there's all these promises that people make, even on the private side. So in this bill, it mandates that any non-equity applicant have a community reinvestment program. Okay, so who is going to enforce that happens?
Right.
They're going to give priority status to people that have that kind of community impact plan. And so what people will do will lie. And so you might have somebody that genuinely wants to be part of the community. Some other bigger community just promises a football field to the local high school, and they get priority status for that.
Right.
Like, there's just no oversight to make sure the aspirational process of this is implemented, and it's giving it to an entity and a current staff that have proven to do the exact opposite of what the intent of what I believe this bill is.
Right.
So while there's a lot to like about it, and I do like a lot of it, and we'll make sure a lot of it remains in there as it moves forward, there's a lot that I'm concerned about too.
Right.
I'll say in the simplest of terms.
Yeah, it's really we have to look at also what's going on in the rest of the country in the markets that are trying to legalize as well. And we see New York, we see New Jersey. They're all including equity in their bills, and we're all seeing the same thing where the corporate entities are trying to gain control. The people who've been working the medical market are trying to gain control of the rec market right off the bat. And that's happening in New York. New York growers put up a whole 5-point plan about why home grow was not good. And, and it was a lot of crap.
Yeah.
And it's the same actors that are here. It's GTI, it's Cureleaf, it's Acreage. You see the same names popping up. In Illinois, they're trying to do it. New Jersey, they're trying to do it. Everywhere, they're trying to do it. For some reason, I mean, Massachusetts has Cureleaf there, but I don't see it going on as much in Mass. For some reason, I think
they had a ballot initiative.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's much harder to pass a monopoly ballot initiative, right? Look what happened in Ohio.
Right. Right. But they lost it
because they couldn't enshrine it right from the get-go. It was harder to do that explicitly later. Where now they can just do it explicitly.
Right.
But I mean, we live in a capitalist society, so it's not surprising to me that this is going to happen. I do think that Connecticut's version, if we can achieve the goals of some of the equity programs of limiting licenses, equity applicants will have a bigger share of the overall market in Connecticut than they may in other places.
Right.
Again, if the actual language were to become law, so that means folks that have been arrested and convicted of cannabis in some fashion will be better off in Connecticut than maybe some other states. Just to put some positives there, but it's basically setting up a bunch of Davids and a bunch of Goliaths to go on the field at the same time, and we all know how that's likely to play out.
Well, David did beat Goliath.
Say that again?
David did beat Goliath.
One-on-one, and he got a little bit lucky. And so I'll take my chances. Right? I'd rather be out there than not on the field at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so it is. And I think we will also see, because things about like selling equity licenses to the bigger companies have the restrictions on that. So we may also see some merger of equity applicants into a strong force that is based on being from an impacted community.
Right.
And so it's definitely possible. And there are ways to give that community breathing space in order to build a business and make things happen But that cannot coexist with emergency powers to have folks just flip it over the day after.
Right. We have some comments on the page there.
Yeah.
So
okay.
shout out to Cody. Cody Roberts, who's going.
Bombastic enough for you.
Yeah, they were starting to go in on that, so we're just trying to see what we got.
What do you think of this trend? Have you seen New Mexico, what they are doing with their legalization bill?
The state owned.
The state owns the dispensaries and the grow facilities and runs them.
Wow.
Yeah. That's interesting. I did see it. I don't think it's the way to go. Yeah, I don't trust that the government will do that job well. There are other places in other countries that have state-run liquor stores. I think maybe even in the States have state-run liquor stores. Is New Hampshire like that?
New Hampshire has state. Yep.
Right?
And it's cheaper, actually.
Yep.
The state-run liquor stores.
Well, Israel also does
because they take the tax
program.
direct.
Yeah.
Well, Uruguay, the country that did legalize marijuana completely, is completely under government control. And it's cheap as hell. It's like $1 a gram.
Yeah.
But you have to register to buy it. So it's like a medical marijuana program, except it's rec.
Right.
But yeah, the government runs, grows, and sells everything.
And Israel's very similar to that. Their medical programs run by the government, and you know, it's surprising. And I don't think that I'm not saying that it would work in America because America's a capitalist, and that's just kind of what it's gonna do. But the options are there, and New Hampshire does do alcohol on a state level, and it is cheap. So
yeah,
we'll see.
So
Connecticut will charge a lot of money.
That is an interesting approach for sure. I think I would like to see more community garden kind of approach.
Me too.
100% behind that.
And that's the other piece, right? Like, there's a lot of good and bad in the bill, but there's also just a lot of other license type options that are not mentioned. That we want to explore either in this bill or that may be something that is more of a down the road thing. But nurseries are not mentioned, special event licenses are not mentioned,
lounges,
consumption spaces are not mentioned.
Right.
Delivery is kind of mentioned, I think, as a piece of retail.
I believe it is, and delivery is more for that medical access, because if somebody's handicapped and doesn't want to really go through all the expense of doing everything, there'll be some delivery there, so that way there's that option. But I also believe, like in other states, delivery should be its own licensure, not necessarily through that single source method. And the micro businesses.
There also needs to be delivery services that go between the new growers and the dispensaries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's a whole, I don't know if that needs to be a separate license. I know in other states it is. So it's called a transportation license.
Delivery. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I mean, in California, eventually they're going to start to have, like, in the mail.
Yeah.
You have to have that discussion.
Yeah.
Like, folks are just hand delivering it now, but.
I think, with social lounges.
Private that remains within state lines, like, can you do that? I don't know.
Yeah. And in the Justice Bill, it did do some public consumption, correct? It was mostly talking about any area where you can't.
When it specifies where you cannot smoke it.
Right, but not where you can.
By default, there's some places you can. And I have to go through the details of it because there's a lot of different chunks to it. You know what I mean?
Of
like
verbiage.
smoking rooms provided by employers, personnel. So there is. It does seem like there are some places that don't meet whatever A through K indicate here.
Right.
That you will be able to smoke it.
Right.
But whether that will be somewhere that is like a cannabis bar or cannabis lounge, it's unclear to me.
Right. And I don't know if Connecticut's ready for that. I mean, Colorado just getting into lounges now.
Alaska approved.
Alaska has
it
lounges.
specifically says tobacco bars cannot expand into cannabis. So lounges. I don't know. Maybe there is social consumption in this.
Yeah, probably. That would be nice.
It's all up to interpretation, and I'm willing to interpret as much as I need to.
So, Jason, before we wrap it up, overall, are you pro or against this bill?
I would be against this bill if I had to do it as stated.
As word for
because the emergency provisions invalidate the rest of the bill.
Right.
And I'm very happy about the equity portion. But I do think the emergency provisions by the current CCP to turn things around would invalidate the Head Start part of it, and it would just, we would have to wait so long, probably at least 2 years for any of the good stuff to kick in before anything would happen, and I feel like that's not to the benefit
The market
of
could be ruined by then.
Everybody.
It could be ruined by then.
So if you were to remove that piece, that changes it quite a bit. You got to slow it down. But that one huge red flag, like I can't. And then the judiciary bill also, like, there's just additions of like penalties that just have really steep consequences that I can't. Like there's things in here that talk about locking people up for more than 7 years for activities. And like, why is that in a legalization bill? Right? We're going to add that to any of this. So, I'm looking forward to pressing on this. I am happy with a lot of it. And I think a good bill will come out of it.
Yes.
Right?
As long as we stay vigilant.
But, just like there were certain portions of 5595 that, like, validated the rest of it, I'm seeing so much interest here. The interesting thing is there wasn't, a lot of those are gone now, right? The police part, as far as taking blood tests, right? I got to go through this again, but there are parts that were removed that mean, that our message was heard, our voices were heard, and so we just got to continue to keep what I think is good in here, take out some of the more outrageous stuff, and we'll get there. We'll get to a good bill that actually brings the House floor.
Right. Very, very cool. All right, Jason, anybody who wants to reach you or get in touch with Cure, how do they do that?
They can reach out to CureCT Digital, and so let me just get that email real quick. It's curectdigital@gmail.com, and you can also reach out to us via Facebook. Our Facebook page is CureCT, and we're always available for folks to comment, post on our page, and we'll be happy to answer as much as we possibly can.
Very, very cool. And we will see you Friday at the hearings, I'm assuming?
That's right.
Absolutely, and I will say already, my opinions may change many times between now and then.
All right.
Feel free to engage. These are really interesting bills that have a lot of good and bad, and so dig into them. And I look forward to talking the details to everybody over the next week.
All right, Jason.
We appreciate that you took your time and spent it with us, Jason.
Take care, man.
Absolutely. No, thank you all for hosting.
Thank you.
See you Friday.
Peace.
Bye.
I always love talking to him.
He's so well-spoken, and he's so educated on what's going on up there.
He's in the know. Talk about in the trenches.
Yeah. So,
Joe, what does our next week look like, Joe?
All right. So tomorrow night there is a forum on equity with Senator McCrory. It is up in Hartford. I believe it is at a restaurant, and I wish Kebra was here.
The West Indian Social Club.
There you go. The West Indian Social Club. It starts at 6.
Kebra will be on the panel.
Kebra will be on the panel.
There is a great group that's going to be talking social equity as well as legalization and cannabis businesses in the Hartford area, because Hartford has validated and said they are looking for the cannabis businesses to join the Hartford community. So this is going to be a great forum. Come
Senator
on out
McCrory.
with Senator McCrory and come out and talk.
Great.
So we'll really be able to share some ideas. Yep.
So the West Indian Club.
At the West Indian Social Club. Yes.
In 6 o'clock in Hartford.
Yes.
That's tomorrow night. Come on down. Wednesday night, the Connecticut normal meeting.
Correct, sir. And that is
at the Rough Draft
in Hamden, Connecticut.
Right back to there. That's important for anybody who wants to come out, learn about what's happening on Friday with the hearings.
Yep.
Get a little more information about the bill, sign up and get active. So
and if anything, they get to meet somebody. They get to meet Joe. They'll get to meet Paul. They'll get to meet somebody and put a face to a name.
Yep.
And a lot of times that goes with, that's first step of engaging.
Yeah,
if you've never done anything.
We got to make this happen. On the 21st, there's a resume workshop down at the Grove in Milford that we're putting that on, how to put your resume together for the cannabis industry.
A resume for cannabis industry. So a lot of people don't understand how to take their current trends and current businesses and trends and bring them right into the mainstream, and this is going to go a long way, and we're pretty excited about that. Joe, you're hosting that, correct, right?
I am teaching the job hunting part.
Very nice.
So I'm going to teach people tips on how to get a job.
Which is a beautiful thing,
How to use that resume to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then this Friday, the Judiciary and General Law hearings. They start at 10. I recommend people get there 8:30, 9 o'clock to sign up if you want to testify.
And it is a long day.
It is a long day.
Let's not downplay this 10 a.m. thing. You're going to get there at 9, sign up.
Now.
Then you're going to talk probably at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. So
and
it's
then
a
you got to
full
get in the
day.
car and go to Nican.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it could be a long day. Now, I've seen the agenda for one of them. I believe it's general law, and there's only 2 bills on it.
Yes.
One is this one, and one is the opioid bill to
Right.
put opioids on the. That should be a pretty quick one because
Yep.
a lot of times what happens with these is they put other things ahead of it, like they did with the hemp bill that day with the hemp hearings. And then you have to sit through, and they do it on purpose when it's weed, because they want you to wait.
That's the last thing that they talk
I
about.
remember being there till 9 o'clock with the guys. I ended up joking around with them. But, yeah, so this is important, guys. And if you can't make it down there,
send an
email to
Make
the
a
committee.
phone call.
Right.
Send an email. That is so important.
Yes.
And if you could even just show up for a small while.
Yeah.
I didn't get to make the whole event last week on Friday. I was there for 10 minutes, but I took the hour drive up.
Yeah.
Was there for 10 minutes. Showed my face, pushed the Porsche,
and
then,
headed up to Mass.
And headed up to Mass. So small anecdotes. They're awesome to meet people and see faces and put people together. So what else we got going on? Nican after that, right, Joe?
Yeah, Nican is next weekend up in Boston at the Heinz Center. Anybody who's interested in going, you can go to nican.com. The awards dinner is Friday night, right after the hearing. And then Nican is the rest of the weekend. So it's a busy, busy cannabis weekend. And then on the 30th, Kebra is doing a educational event at Southern.
Yes.
And that's at 1 o'clock.
Yes, and that's also with Senator McCrory?
No, it's just an educational event for Southern Connecticut University up there.
Oh. I saw something about that as well, and there's a couple people included in that. So that's pretty awesome.
There is. There's other speakers involved in that. And then there is a new forum up in Bridgeport being held, I believe, on the 25th. I got to get more info about that. But anyway, we are
I think that's where we're going. So, Joe, any other special plans for yourself? Anything else going on?
No, I'm just getting ready for Friday and Wednesday night's normal meeting.
I was very excited to spend some time with Flower Power Coffee, and they spoke great things about Go Joe's.
Excellent, man. My favorite people up there, the Flower Power people, and Kara and everybody. I'm glad you hooked up. I wish I could have been there. We'll get them down this way.
And to everybody, stay happy, healthy, and high.
See you next
I'm very
week.
Excited to stay in your life.
Well, hopefully to see you Friday. At the hearings.
Or Nican. Say hello. Don't be shy. If you see us, say hello. We love the hello.
All right, man. We'll see y'all next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care.
Grower said he got sour, need that whole yard. I'm chasing turkey bag, I'm chasing gold yard. Tell us down, we won't go far. Blue sherbet stuff the whole jar. 100 P's on the Bay Bridge, stuck in traffic. If I ever run into Riri, let's make magic. Die doing something you love, it ain't tragic. Heard what I said, it ain't tragic. From the home of lay down, smoking ratchets. Never win when you spell it backwards. I got green in the bay, my whole team Packers. Hold the plug, I need 100 P's. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I told my plug I need 100 P's. Now my shoebox got 100 G. Told the plug I need 100 P's. Now my shoebox got 100 G. I told my plug I need 100 P's. Now my shoebox got 100 G. Gucci slides with the G's while I'm selling P's. Walking proof, money growing trees. Hit the plug, he gon' fly the geese. 100 P's, we supply the streets. Gelato cookies and that blue cheese. Your bitch woman, she got blue knees. Call her Arizona, she got a few C's. When I'm in California, plug like what you need. Pounds, 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 pounds.
Yeah, come on. Sitting at the party, rocking back and forth, acting like you divorced. Get legs from the dance floor. Girls are saying they want more. Fellas to get on.